Well, it's just another argument with another section of the community, but of course the one we referred to earlier was the Stephen Smith versus the Defence Department or the military brass. It seems, though, that some people have forgotten a core principle here, and that is that the civilians do actually run the show. Here's Hugh White.
We expect the Treasurer to be in charge of the Treasury. We expect the Minister for Foreign Affairs to be in charge of the Foreign Affairs Department. But somehow, for quite a long time now, we've accepted that the Defence Minister is a kind of a customer of the Defence organisation instead of the leader of it.
And he's not. In fact, he can run operational matters if he wants to.
He can. Look, there's an inherent tension here between an organisation which, as Peter Cosgrove said, involves people who go out and have trained to kill people. You know, that's the Defence Department, and that makes the Defence Force an unusual organisation. And the people who are its political masters. In the end, every decision about going to war is a political decision. So there is an inherent tension there between those two things. I think we've got to a pretty bad stage with the relationship between the government and the Defence Department at the moment. I'm told it's extremely tense still. I think this is quite historical. It goes back to a whole lot of other things, and I agree with what Malcolm said before, that this issue has detonated a whole lot of other tensions over money and management of assets, the way projects have been managed. Part of the problem is that under the Howard government, Defence got a greater run. They got a lot more money. They got a lot more free rein to do what they wanted. The Defence ministers, well, there were 5 in the Howard era, 5 different ministers, and really the Prime Minister ran the show, and the Prime Minister was very sympathetic to Defence. Under the Labor government, that has changed. They've had 3 ministers already under Labor. The churn doesn't help, but I think that it's been a shock to Defence to have a minister try to exercise that.
How do you think Stephen Smith has handled himself?
Well, I think there is an issue of accountability of the Defence Force over all sorts of issues. We saw with the Queensland floods, the Defence really, the armed services, the Navy wasn't quite up to speed with dealing with the floods.
Not quite up to speed. It couldn't get away on the water.
And questions need to be answered about that, and the Defence Minister is right to really raise serious questions about the operation, the efficient operation, the accountability of the Defence Department. My issue is really whether this particular issue, of which we don't really know all the whole circumstances of happening on it's really an education facility of the Defence Department involving a young woman and cadets who have obviously, everyone's done the wrong thing, as Barnaby Joyce said, you know, fraternisation's not allowed, as to whether the Defence Minister has enough of information whether it's the right thing for him to get involved in micromanagement of these sort of disciplinary matters on the Defence Force, in Defence education
facilities. It's open to him to do it if he wants to.
It is, but is this the one that he wants to really pull on the big fight about accountability of the Defence Forces?
I have to say, I'm a little uncomfortable with how far he went in terms of directly intervening in a military disciplinary matter and saying that charges on a whole other thing should be quashed and looked at again. You do have to be really careful when you're a minister getting involved in that kind of level of the running of the Defence Force, and I'm not sure that was a terrifically smart move to go that far publicly, and that is the issue. That issue and his comments directly about the Commandant are what have really inflamed this situation. And I'm told, you know, the Chief of the Defence Force made it very clear that he was prepared to go. I don't think he said it directly, but I understand it was very clear to everyone that he would go if this issue was really going to be pushed any further.
As was reported in the Australian during the week.
And he goes in July anyway.
He does, yeah.
Now, and then, of course, this other issue was thrown into the mix about women in combat roles. Here's Julie Gillard.
A few years ago, I heard Peter Cosgrove say that men and women should have an equal right to fight and die for their country. I think he's right about that, and I think it's a good turn of phrase. It puts the choice very starkly. If a woman has the physical capability and intellectual capability to do a particular job, then I do not believe it should be denied her on the basis of gender.
Can't imagine why they'd march in the streets for the right to die in a war, but...
Actually, as I recall it, I thought there was a bit of a sort of innuendo there that in the original comment by General Cosgrove that maybe, you know, women wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, but where did it come from anyway? It seemed to come out of a clear blue sky. Was it part of the just a distraction?
It's been accelerated. It's been around in Defence for a long time, this idea that they should open up all the last 7% of positions, but it's been accelerated at the government's instigation to link it to this. Now, I think they did it to to have something else to talk about, to turn attention to something else. The problem is, though, when you've got a sort of emotional, inflamed situation between young men and young women in ADFA and whole issues of sexism and all sorts of things, to throw this in the mix, it ties that to this whole debate now. It ties this to suggestions that women aren't being respected, and you end up having a kind of murky, messy debate that maybe you wouldn't have if you introduced it in a clearer atmosphere.
I think, as the Prime Minister, she put it in terms of a rights agenda, that women have the right to do things. And I think you ask yourself, well, does this make the military a more effective fighting force? Now, they say now that women are open to, they can get into 93% of roles in the military. No doubt that has improved the military, and having an all-male military in this day and age wouldn't be as good as having women in there. Whether it is necessarily improves our fighting capacity to have women in as paratroopers or right in hand-to-hand combat, I think that's a question that has to be asked. All
they're saying is women have an entitlement to be a candidate for combat positions. Not that they have an entitlement to be in those positions. As long as they measure up. Look, I'm a man. There are several hundred reasons, however, why I should never be seen anywhere near the SAS blokes wandering around a Roosegat. But I just would not cut it. There's no way in the world. And maybe some women, or most women, or all women, would not cut it either. Yeah. But I have a right to be a candidate. I can go down to the recruitment office tomorrow.
And it shouldn't be about, and I heard one, old digger saying during the week, I wouldn't want women in a foxhole. I'd feel like I had to have sex with them. I mean, it shouldn't be about... It shouldn't be about...
Well, Barnaby Joyce couldn't kill one. I'm damn sure if some woman was trying to kill me, I would have no hesitation in killing her.
I really, with the greatest respect, don't think it should be about whether men can control their hormones. I agree. I think it should be about whether women are intellectually, physically and psychologically capable of doing the work.